Okay, let's keep an eye on what's going on in America with these flights. 4% has been taken out. First, they've added another 2% on flights being allocated to reduction. So 1,200 flights not being flying out, and if it's get worse, there's the major person that's over these will cause the airlines to take 20% of their air flights off grid. Let's find out what's happening across these international airports in America. We got SeaTac International Airport and other airports, St. Louis, LAX, and one other, Nashville, Tennessee, representing a national southern hub. Well, let's find out what's going on across America with these flights.
We are keeping an eye on everything that does play out. And of course, a big story we're watching, the situation over at the airports. You can see several different live images that we do have coming in at this hour. And I can tell you right now, it is already very busy at several airports, as we've learned that there are just today more than 1,100 flights that have been canceled and about 800 or so that have been delayed. That number only expected to rise here as the day does progress. Now, Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy issuing a warning saying if this government shutdown does continue for a period of time here, he could force airlines to cut up to 20% of their flights. That's 1 in every 5. The Federal Aviation Administration on Friday, just 2 days ago, instructing airlines to cut 4% of flights at 40 major airports due to those staffing shortages, again caused by the shutdown. Those cuts are going to rise to 10% by next Friday. So what does all this mean, and essentially what could be the impact to you at home? I do want to bring in Dr. Philip Mann, an aviation expert there at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us to discuss what a lot of people are talking about.
Sure thing.
See this house in Texas?
This happened major across the American landscape. I don't know what's going to happen, but things got to change, and shutdowns continue to affecting so much holiday schedules.
All right, so first off, talking about just today, again, I said more than 1,100 flights canceled just for today, just for this Sunday, more than 700, possibly as many as 800 already delayed. How does that compare to, let's say, your average day? Because that seems like a very high number.
It sounds like a big number, but it's kind of important to keep in mind the kind of scale of air travel. You know, on any given kind of random day in the middle of like October, we might have 25,000, 30,000 flights that day. So if you cut down, 5-ish% of those, you're going to get several hundred, 1,000 something flights, a little more than that. And as we're creeping up towards the holidays, Thanksgiving flights might be 45,000, 50,000. So if we're cutting out, say, 5% of those flights, we're going to see a proportionately larger number. So the numbers sound big. And there is a little bit of a, there can be a little bit of a difference of interpretation about how some people are interpreting these. For example, if the FAA is telling them to reduce capacity, basically they're reducing the total number of flights into an airport. That doesn't necessarily mean that's going to be a reduced, a total equal reduction in number of passengers, say, because they might change out a smaller plane for a bigger plane or something like that because a plane is a plane, one flight's one flight, and if it holds 50 people or it holds 500 people, it's still one flight.
When you talk about which actual flights are reduced here, is there kind of an airport or a type of flight that is more maybe at risk of being cut in those reductions?
Yeah, the FAA put out a command basically to the airlines to tell them to reduce the flights, and they told them to reduce flights at specific airports. Now, all airports are kind of interconnected, so the 5,000 or so commercial airports we have in the country, just those 40 are going to affect all of the other ones in total. But what I think the airlines, it's important to keep in mind that they are businesses, so they're going to make the cuts where it makes business sense, so they can meet the capacity target, but then also maximize their revenue, minimize their cost losses, things like that. So I would expect flights that are kind of profit losers, low volume flights, low passenger flights to probably be cut first. Because again, if they have a flight that's got 6 people on it and they cut that flight, that's one of them they can drop and then keep the one that has 50 people on it and make more money that way. So that's going to be the kind of thing. I think they're going to probably look at cutting redundant flights or where they've got 2 aircraft that are going to the same place, maybe an hour apart, trying to figure out how to combine those into a single flight. Because again, it's going to be, from the airline's perspective, I mean, obviously, safety is always going to be the big thing. It's why we're making these reductions to begin with. But it's from the airline's perspective, is going to be managing costs, managing losses, managing their revenue, and that's going to probably be the big driver for them.
As we go and look at shutdowns past here, have we seen a situation like this where we're talking 4% flight reductions, 10%, and then potentially, according to Duffy, 20%? Have we ever seen anything like that?
We have seen the extreme end of that of 9/11 when they canceled everything was 100%. But and in the days following that, where they allowed a few more flights, as that kind of got going. But we actually do flight reductions and flight kind of quotas, if you will, constantly all year round, especially when there's bad weather. We see if there's predicted, say, some really bad weather going in the Northeast, the number of flights allowed into the Northeast and into those airports will be reduced. It's not usually something that's public facing. Usually it's something that the FAA will say, hey, we got to reduce capacity because of weather. And then the airlines will handle it, and the airlines will just deal with the passengers, and everybody just kind of thinks the airlines just decided to do that. But it's a big coordinated effort between everybody involved in the national airspace system to maintain safety, even at the expense of the convenience to the flyers.
What sort of maybe impacts would your average passenger, your average traveler who's just trying to get to a location, what are maybe the average issues that they are going to see as all of this is ongoing?
Yeah, well, I think they're going to see, kind of things that you'd expect with government systems under strain. Because keep in mind that the TSA is also in that same kind of boat that the air traffic controllers are in, as are all the maintenance people that work in the airfields. So I'd expect people to see longer lines. I'd expect people to see fewer security checkpoints open. I'd expect people to see longer, maybe a little more hassle-prone kind of things where they're trying to get their flights resolved with the airlines. I think I kind of recommend for people, though, is just kind of keep in mind your own personal risk tolerance. We already know that there are going to be flights canceled. There are going to be flights delayed. So maybe if people are super, super strict with their time, say they're traveling over Thanksgiving and they absolutely have to be back to work Monday morning, maybe they ought to fly back Friday or Saturday and not wait till try to catch a flight on Sunday. Manage your personal risk. And I think what we're going to see a lot for the passenger experience is that difference between the people that manage their risk and that kind of either planned ahead or allowed for the additional time and stuff versus the people that didn't. And that's going to be amplified over the holiday season because, say the month of October wasn't too bad because a lot of October is the usual daily professionals that travel a lot. I travel a lot, maybe you travel a lot. But then coming to holiday season, we get some of those folks that Thanksgiving is the only time they get on an airplane the entire year. If that, it might be the only time they get on an airplane every 5 or 6 years. So those folks are going to be showing up to the airport, thrown into the chaos in the middle of all the other stuff. So for the average person, it's probably going to be a little, probably a little bit more stressful, maybe even a lot more stressful. But everybody's going to be trying to do the best they can from TSA all the way up to air traffic controllers.
Which airports, and this is kind of unrelated, but related in a sense, I just wanted to get your take on which airports could potentially have the biggest delays here as all of this is ongoing, because Atlanta seems to have the busiest airport, I would say, nationwide. If you've ever gone through there, you definitely know.
Well, guys, sir, he's several points. So basically, I'm gonna talk to the American citizens. Basically say be mindful of what you're doing. You're flying. Don't try to. You got to get back to work, man. Plan it early. Leave early, because there's cut down on flights. There's cut down on the amount of people that's going to the plane size, the volume of people, the capacity of the plane that could take so many customers. And he's telling you that the airports and airplane companies are businesses. They're looking at the profit margins. They're looking at the reduction. They're looking at everything, but from a profit standpoint, not from a customer standpoint. You're the last on the totem pole. Although you the one to make it goes around, make the business function, but you're not, they're not focused on you. There's going to be delays, longer lines. He's trying to state um, there's going to be a lot of difficult situation arrives. So be prepared for what's going down, and so don't let it catch you off guard. Schedule a day or two earlier if you're going to fly back. You got to be back to work Monday morning. The holidays, understand there's going to be a lot of people traveling on the holidays, So you might get delayed, you might get bumped for the next day. So hey, try to get the last minute is always going to be last minuters. People that just that's the way they operate, and they're gonna want to be treated like first class customers, and it doesn't work that way. So he's trying to give you forewarning what's going to happen on the horizon, and understand this is a business, this is transportation, air transportation. So don't take it personal. You know, be patient, be humble, and give time, a lot of time, towards this transition that the American airline companies and airports are having. Okay, let's continue with. If you agree with that, leave a comment below, yes or no, and tell me what you think.
Know that. There's some other airports, like let's say I've been to the Lexington, Kentucky airport. They're not used to seeing a lot of delays. Orlando's kind of in the middle there in Florida. So which airports might see the biggest impact?
It's going to kind of depend what you mean and how it affects you personally. Because again, it's going to be they gave that list of 40 airports. Because of the way airlines work, they do what's called a hub and spoke. So for example, I'll be flying over the holidays from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania down to Nashville, but I have to connect through Charlotte because that's a hub. So if Charlotte is one of the ones, and I don't have the list in front of me, but Charlotte is one of the ones that has reductions in flights, then both my flight from Harrisburg and my flight to Nashville may suffer because of something going on in Charlotte. So that's kind of thing is going to be the flights with multiple connections are going to be more prone to having interference with them. Whereas if you have a direct and nonstop flight, if I could get a nonstop flight, say from Harrisburg to Nashville, well, that's just one flight. I don't have to worry about my connecting second flight. I can just take one flight and it either runs or it doesn't, or it's delayed or it's not, but then I don't have multiple touch points with the potential cancellations. Obviously, the bigger the airport, the busier the airport, the more operations they handle, the bigger the cuts are going to be. An airport that handles 5,000 flights a day, say, if there's a 5,000 operations a day, if they got to cut that by 10%, that's going to be 500. But an airport that handles 20 operations a day, they're going to see 2. But those 2 might be the only ones going to where they're going. So so it's going to be very much a personal experience. There's not really a blanket thing for how people are going to feel the impact.
If we were to see the shutdown end today, that's not looking likely. We know the Senate is convening to potentially take a vote, but it's not expected to pass at this point. So if the shutdown, though, were to end today, how much longer would we likely see the impacts of this flight reduction? Is there any way to really know? Because I have to imagine it's not going to be an immediate solution.
No, it's not, because it's one of the ways we can kind of look at this is, if you remember the 2018-2019 shutdown, which was 35 days. 35 days. Now that one began at a couple days before Christmas, so we didn't experience that over the holidays the way we're going to experience this one. But that one ended when 10 air traffic controllers across the country had called out, and it forced a reduction in air traffic control and air traffic stuff. So, and then that situation with the reductions they had to do there still took many weeks to kind of wash out of the system and get back to normal. And we know, from all the coverage we've had over this year, that air traffic control is and has been for 40 years short-staffed. It has been short-staffed. So it's going to take, I would plan on a couple of months at least for it to get back to the way it was before the shutdown. Because even then, air traffic controllers were working 60-hour weeks in a lot of facilities, rotating shifts, understaffed, all that kind of stuff. So we're hoping to get back to that not great situation from where we are now. But now all these reductions are done just preemptively, because we know the system's taxed. We know the system is under strain. So let's reduce the amount of throughput we're trying to force through the system to ensure the safety, even if it is compromising the convenience to the flyers.
All right. Dr. Philip Mann, thank you so much for taking the time, as always, to help break it down. And before I let you go, anything that you want to add about this, anything we missed?
I just kind of want to reiterate that air travel is safe, and these reductions are being done to maintain that safety. But with respect to the individual thing, the individual experience, I just really want people to think about, what is your own personal risk tolerance? If you can't tolerate a delay because your schedule's too tight, or something else is going on where a single delay or a single cancellation is just going to wreck your whole week, Maybe consider trying to push the trip, put the trip off to grandma until after the shutdown ends, or maybe try to fly a little earlier, show up a little earlier, try to mitigate the risks a little bit, because there's a chance everybody's going to see something, some little delay, some little extra time in line, something like that. And the more we can go into it kind of expecting those things to happen and having a plan to manage those personally, the easier it's going to be for us, and the easier it's going to be for everybody else involved.
I totally agree with that statement from this aviation expert. The holiday's going to be interesting, guys. Get there early, be there, see your families, travel. Less planes, less planes. Going to be another side of this. Going to be more packed because they're going to try to get the most money they can get out, as he said earlier. So be prepared for that too.
Philip, man,
So
thank you so much again for taking.
it's going to be amazing shifting. So without further ado, what do you guys think? Leave a comment down below. We see that it's not going to affect major, but it's going to have its effects. And the bottom, I call it from a business standpoint, uh, air, air, uh, air traffic, aviation bottom line from the airplane companies and from the airports. Everything's going to be working around the bottom line. There's going to be a reduction, but it's going to be a bottom line effect, and that bottom line is going to affect us with delays, longer lines, less TSAs with the shutdown, less stock people, less people working. Yes, there's going to be less people like that. So without further ado, that's going to happen. We know that's going to happen. So let's get prepared for this. What's your opinion? Leave it comment down below. Let me know what you feel. Do you agree with this? I do not agree. I think it should be during the holidays should be more flights to get people across the country in different parts of the country. They got over 5,000 locations across the American landscape, and there should not be that many delays. But hey, how can we tell what the airport needs and the necessities and what the airline industries needs? So we'll see. Leave a comment down below. Let me know what you feel, what you think. I'm waiting to hear from you.